So I'm Renzo Sgolacchia, and at the moment I live in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, where last year I organized a screening events where I was introducing these films to a generic public audience through drawings that were illustrating the films. So I would like to now make this presentation and say that the idea is about a project of a film. So I would like to make a film, and try to demonstrate what we can learn from a film. There are somehow three objectives. So engaging architects in filmmaking practices to deal with complex urban realities. Most of the time, filmmaking is just part of architecture practices as to promote a building that is just realized. So at the last phase of the design process, I would like to somehow to reverse this kind of things and introduce film or suggest a filmic survey at the beginning or the first phase of a project. And I will analyze abandoned sites and unfinished architecture in an exploratory way, so with a subjective and not detached point of view of a camera. Somehow these buildings are always considered unproductive, and most of the time, like in Rome, where there are plenty of unfinished and abandoned buildings, they are not only in the back side of the city, but they are sometimes in the most prominent part of the city. So, but Rome is just an hypothesis, let's say. I would like to start with this, with the ruin in reverse by Robert Smithson. The definition of a ruin in reverse, that is the opposite of the romantic ruin, because the building don't fall into ruin after they are built, but rather rise into ruin before they are built. And this is a case. This sports city complex in Rome, designed by Calatrava. The render from 2005, and this is the abandoned building site in still the picture in 2019. It's a perfect case of ruin in reverse. The first estimation cost for this building was 60 million. The last estimation is 600 millions. They already spent, so even more, so 10 times more. And 200 millions they already spent, so you can imagine that it will remain like this, most probably. Yeah. So what to do with it? And this is Rome, an aerial view. We are in the metropolitan area of Rome. That seems in the foreground that we are in a countryside somehow. And in fact, it's one of the largest metropolitan area in Europe, I think the third. And at the same time, there are only 3 million of inhabitants for this large area. There are many already mapped abandoned unfinished buildings. This was one of the most famous in Computo, the birth of a style. They started, as you can see, from Sicily. The first project they did was called In Computo Siciliano. There are even much more on the north, of course, but still there is this romantic point of view to watch at this ruin. There are many maps. Those are cinema lovers in Rome that they map abandoned or former cinema in the city, the pink square. And also, there are also abandoned buildings that are with people. There are two different kind of, this is greenhouse in a monumental villa, where homeless lives there. In Rome, there are 10,000 homeless, and only 2,500 lives in dormitories arranged for them. And this is another place, former cinema. a developer was planning there a casino, but was occupied, and now it's like this. Actually, this building is the third in a national list of eviction, so they are risking to be evicted somehow. And so there are, all of them, they are still considered unproductive. And most of the time, or all of the time in architecture, we have is built only what is productive, in the sense only what produce a revenue through taxes or in other forms. So here I just select 5 of them in the city. There on the edge, there is the building that we saw before, the sport complex. And what I suggest is just to see them, to recompose them, not just to see them as separated in a map, but to recompose them as an imaginary building or as an imaginary urban block. So in this, those are the 5 cases, but can be whatever, can be even more cases. So office building, those are really famous. They just started another building site here, but let's see if they will manage to finish this time. And yeah, this one we talked already. Here another political social center, really famous because they live, and this that seems abandoned, 200 people, and at the same time there is also a museum there that is pretty known right now, and 2 other sport facility close to the center. So what I propose is just this linear trajectory of the camera to emphasize first the scale of these buildings altogether, and also the fact that you can enter somehow from the city and go out through the editing. You can go out in a countryside somehow, and but it's just an apparent linearity through the editing. This can be arranged with this linearity. So it's just the linear point of view of the camera. So I have just now an example that I would like to show. I take a video I will manually show you that I made more than 10 years ago in Havana, just to show how could work this point of view. So how can reconstruct this kind of imaginary building. Just 1 minute or something.